Welcome back to Connections Break Barriers. This is a special conversation series with the MBA programs at Kennesaw State University. Today, I am talking to Jasmine Crowe Houston. She is a person that has been doing amazing work for a long time, feeding people, was doing that work long before the company that a lot of people know about, Goodr. Today, we're talking about not only the journey to build the business, but all of the relationships and people that she's engaged in order to make the business what it is. Really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoy it too. See you soon. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. That question for me is important, right?
Yeah.
And the answer to it is important. I think that a lot of times we just zoom past the hello highs.
Yeah.
And it's like, no,
There's more to it.
It's
Yeah.
a lot more to it.
There's a lot more to it.
I have a lot of questions for you. Mostly, I want to talk about the power of relationships. You're a person that has leveraged and built a ton of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to that, though, a little background. Where's home? Where are you from?
I'm a military kid, but I claim North Carolina because I went to college and high school there. But other than that, really along the Southwest. So we lived in Oregon, we lived in Arizona, we lived in New Mexico, we lived in Texas. So a little bit of everywhere. And then my dad got out of the military. He took a job in Charlotte. That's where I went to high school and college. So I love North Carolina.
Do you have meaningful relationships from North Carolina, or did the movement kind of prohibit establishing those sort of roots?
I think the relationships that I have started in North Carolina. I don't have anything before then. It's so funny because my husband, is one of those people who grew up in one town, went to high school, still has friends that live there. Mom still his parents still live in the same house. I don't have that. I don't have a hometown in a sense. So I don't have a place to call home. But specifically, my relationships in college, I still am very close friends. One of my best friend was my roommate in college. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of relationships that started in college.
I totally relate. It wasn't until I got to college, because I moved around a lot growing up too, that I was meeting people that were talking about oh yeah, we've been best friends since we were 2 or 3, and I'm
yeah, I never said
I don't know anybody from that stage,
no
right?
one.
And most of my friends have come since college too. Okay, work. Let's fast forward a little bit past college. Your first meaningful job. And I've asked everyone this question, and it's interesting. Folks will say their first career job, and then other folks will be like, yeah, my paper route.
Yeah.
So
I feel like a job that always sticks to me is I was a gymnastics coach inside of preschools when I was 14. And so I loved gymnastics. And then I was working for a woman who, it was her franchise. It was called Tumble Tots. And so essentially she would go around to different preschools, and it was on Wednesdays we have gymnastics and it's $8 or $10, and I would get half of that. So it was always me trying to get more kids to try it, because I would get half of that $8, $4 per kid to teach the class. And I loved it. I remember my mom would drop me off, and it was my summer job, and that meant a lot to me because it was a way to still do gymnastics, but get to work with kids. And I thought from there I wanted to be a teacher, went to school and majored in education, and then changed sophomore year. I was I don't want to be a teacher. I did a whole summer thing where I was actually a teacher's assistant with this program. I think it was called Hands to Charlotte. And long story short, didn't want to be a teacher.
What did you want to be at that point? What did you think about pivoting into?
Being a sports broadcaster, which is really interesting. And because I've always not liked my voice. I've always been very teased about my voice. And so that was a way that I was going to pop out and show them. I'm going to be on the sidelines interviewing the players with this voice. So I thought I started focusing on broadcast journalism and communications, and would intern with Radio 1, started to then kind of the event space and the PR space. So I've actually lived, ironically, a lot of different lives if you think of the different careers that I've thought I wanted to be in. And at the end of the day, I think everything always rooted back to helping people. In hindsight, that's where I think I'm in the career now that I love, because I'm helping people and I always wanted to.
Where do you think that comes from? That the idea of helping people? Is it just something that's always been inside of you? Was
I've
it
seen
taught?
it. Yeah, I mean, my dad definitely was a mentor. He was a big brother, so he used to help and like mentor lots of young men that didn't have their fathers in their lives. And I remember years ago, maybe like 15 years ago, I think at this point, one of the young men, his name was Maurice. He's a teacher now. He looked up my dad. I think it was on Facebook, and like told my dad how much he meant to his life. And it just, I always thought that was so cool. Like this young kid that, and my dad probably was only in his life probably for 2 to 3 years, albeit because he was transferred somewhere else. But those 2 to 3 years of just having someone to go to a baseball game with, or drive go-karts with, shaped his life so much that he's a teacher now. So I think I started to see like the ripples of kindness and how things could really change lives. And just wanted to, I've always been someone who wants to stand up for others how I would want people to stand up for me. I wish more of the world was like that though, but that's always how I've been.
No, it's super important, and it's part of why these conversations are important to me, right? Because if we could just like be there for one another, show up in a different way, it could really make the difference. So before we get into your work, your entrepreneurial path, it's truly one that's like born out of passion, right? Like true inspiration,
true passion.
So talk to me about how you got there, right? So you didn't wake up one day. It doesn't sound like I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like you wanted to solve a problem.
For sure. Well, I was working at the Phoenix Suns. I was doing suite sales and like season ticket sales, and started in Phoenix. It's a very non-diverse city. Like think of Atlanta. Flip it on. I mean, it's like, I think at the time when I was living in Phoenix, this was right when I got out of college. So when I got out of college and graduated, I always tell this story. My parents, I wanted to go to Howard University so bad, got in, and my mom was like, oh, you can't go to D.C., we want you to stay close to us. So I stayed in North Carolina. My freshman year, my parents moved to Portland, Oregon. They wanted me to stay close to them, but then they moved across the country. So they didn't like Portland. They ended up moving to Phoenix. So when I graduated college, moved to Phoenix to go back home and kind of figure it out. I didn't have a job, but got a job working at the Suns, doing a lot with the players on the side. Like started to think I liked the community relations stuff, and I dabbled in everything. I was like doing PR. I was like staffing models. I mean, you believe it or not, I was just hustling, really trying to make it out there in Phoenix. But the Super Bowl was coming, and so in 2012, the Super Bowl was coming to Phoenix. 2008 and 2012, the Super Bowl came, and I applied to be a diverse supplier and got an opportunity to just work on certain events because there was no diversity in Phoenix. But I got to do like Ray Lewis's football camp. I'll never forget that, and that was. From there, it was just like I was helping athletes and mostly NFL players, some NBA players, do good in the community. That was my whole thing. And then I started blogging about it because I realized nobody was covering the good that they were doing. It was like, oh, they're having a party, I want to come, but they're throwing a football camp for 500 free kids and it's going to be free. Nothing was happening. So I started a company called Black Celebrity Giving. Through that, worked with a lot of celebrities, started a lot of foundations, Futures Foundation, worked with Candy Burris, Tucker helped Candy's Foundation, still operate that today. Mike Will made it, just really started helping people do good. And what I realized, it was very seasonal. I was very busy, back to school, Thanksgiving, Christmas, like bam, bam, bam. Everybody wanted to do good. And I remember saying to somebody, the same people standing in line for a turkey in November are hungry in April. Like this is not just like a one day a year, we got to feed people. And I think one of them said like, you got to do it. I got to do, this, I got to do me. You got to do you. So I started feeding people on the streets here in Atlanta for 4 years before I ever started Goodr. So when you talk about like the passion and the service, it was, I knew I wanted to do something to help people. Did I know I wanted to be an entrepreneur? Probably after working for a couple of years, I felt like I did know I didn't know it at that time. But I'll tell you now, sometimes being an entrepreneur, like I want to go be an employee. Like there's a lot of things I'm like, who is hiring? Because I can't take it. But I think there were times when I was like, I would do this differently.
Going back quickly to Black Celebrity Giving, a lot of folks, celebrities are folks that a lot of people want to meet. That's why they're famous. Yeah. You built and have continued to build an extensive network with people who are well known. Yeah. How?
I think doing what I say I'm going to do and helping them do what I tell them I believe that they could do. I think it's just the honoring your word, right? I can't tell you how many celebrity relationships, even when I think of the celebrity relationships I've brought into the fold at Goodr, which have far expanded even what I did at Black Celebrity Giving, working with celebrities of all walks of life. It's just been amazing to think back to all the different people, from Colin Kaepernick to CJ McCollum to Little Baby to Gunna to different record labels. I mean, to Earth Gang, just so many different relationships we've worked and brokered with Goodr. But a lot of that has come through referrals. It's been like, oh, you got to talk to Jasmine. Oh, you trying to do something good? You got to talk to Jasmine. That's how it's been.
What's one misconception that you think that folks have about working with celebrities? Because everybody wants to be a celebrity this, celebrity that, celebrity chef, celebrity trainer.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so funny. I remember back in the day when I was dating and running Black Celebrity Giving before Goodr, strictly Black Celebrity Giving. I remember this guy was like, I don't know about dating a woman that be around celebrities all the time. And I was thinking to myself, you can really work. Like, they are people, it is business and things are happening. But as a woman, I remember specifically dating somebody and they told me that was like a concern of theirs, that I worked with celebrities a lot. So I always laugh about that. I mean, obviously we were never going to make it. But I think one misconception is that it's easy to work with celebrities, or that you'll never leave. That once you get in with the celebrity life, you're there for forever. And for some people, I think that that's true. That becomes the lifestyle. They like it and things of that nature. For me, I knew that I started being really intrigued at the brand partnerships that celebrities brought. And that was even when I would work with the celebrities, I remember saying to them, listen, you're working with Puma, can they send shoes? You're doing this, can they do this? Start asking for different things to help serve this community more, and really asking to get back and give back, get a percentage of something. And so that was, I think, a early misconception for me is that they got everything, that it came so easy to them, and they hustle too.
One thing I've always admired about your approach to that work is that you may know the celebrity, right? But you have a relationship a lot of times with all of the other people.
Yeah, with the moms.
The moms, the sisters, the cousins, the people who actually
the managers. Those are. I mean, I think of some of my relationships with the celebrities. It is the people around them, and they're long. I think that's so crazy. I was talking to Candy's team recently, and we just dawned on us. We've been working together for 10 years, since 2014 when I first moved to Atlanta. That's when I started working with her, when she first was on Real Housewives. And so it's just crazy to think that we've worked together for 10 years, and those relationships don't thrive if I'm not doing what I say I'm going to do, because then no one works with me for 10 years. It just doesn't happen that way.
And to that point around longevity, right? I think that's another misconception. That folks think that you're going to walk in. It's funny. Folks will see a person out in a public place and they'll, try to strike up a conversation. And I don't want to say this never happens.
Yeah.
But most of the work, and true or false, right? But it seems like most of the work happens when there's time involved. People know you. They know your work. It's not just
It doesn't happen right away. It definitely doesn't happen. I mean, I wish it did, because there'd be so many. I mean, I think one time I was like, I should email. I remember when we first opened our first grocery store with Gunna, and I was thinking, every celebrity needs to open a grocery store in their former school. This, specifically if they came from any kind of area of underserved. This should be something that everybody does. And I was thinking, so even me, as someone who's had the relationships and had the histories, I was still thinking, how do I start talking to these people? I need to get John Moran on the phone. Who do I let me try and talk to this rapper and this rapper. Could Rick Ross do one? I started thinking that, and it is about relationships. It's not even about sometimes the proof of what you've done. It is still sometimes about who you know.
Reputation. Hey, we're going to get back to this conversation, but if you're like me, you're always trying to advance your skill set and grow both personally and professionally. One of the most effective ways to do this is through advanced degrees. I'm proud to be working with my friends at Kennesaw State University for this podcast. With 3 MBA programs to choose from, executive, evening, or web, their curriculum incorporates the latest industry trends and skills that will allow you to make an immediate impact in your career. With KSU's MBA programs, you'll benefit from a flexible format that fits your schedule, including part-time options, 100% online courses, and even a unique weekend format for their Executive MBA. Graduate in as little as 19 months while building lasting connections with a cohort of peers and professionals. Plus, you can see ROI fast with tuition starting as low as $20,000. Nationally ranked and featuring dual accreditation by AACSB International, ranking it in the top 2% of business schools worldwide, Kennesaw State University will help you reach your full potential. Ready to start your journey? Learn more today at ksumba.com. How do you maintain, really, not just with the celebrities, just with people, like in business? You work with a lot of big companies, too. How do you maintain relationships? Like, what is the process of doing that?
I think it's constant check-ins. I think it's a lot of accountability for when things don't go right. I mean, there's, in business, I know you know this, things could happen. Trucks could be late, something doesn't show up. People, you hire somebody, they have an experience with your client that's not good, and they're a representation of you, and you've got to be able to apologize and say like, hey, I'm sorry, I want to do better, forgive us, let us make this right. So I think kind of realizing when we don't get it right, but then when we do get it right, celebrating together, whether that's like, hey, can we do a joint LinkedIn post? Can we talk about this? Let's do a case study. Let's put it out. We've served 500,000, pregnant moms together. Let's talk about this and show how we're helping to help unborn children. Like, these are the things that I think about relationships. And I think I treat everybody. I've been recently going just through a lot of different team transitions, and so I'm jumping in a lot, like where, it's probably, people are kind of like, why is the CEO on this call? Listen, I'm on the call. Like, how can I help? What do I need to do? Like, I'm here to help, like whatever it needs to happen. And people are so shocked by that. Even though we're a small company, I remember one of the hospital companies we work with, one of the executive directors told me, she's like, my staff told me you've been meeting with them and they're just so grateful for that. And I was like, yeah, like, that was so shocking to her. So just, again, servant leadership, humility-based, like not to be humbled. Like, people are always like, be humble, but just humility-based. Like, it's not beneath me to get on a call and save a relationship if it's for my company.
No, I think that's a core thing that is super important to talk about, right? I meet founders all the time that'll be in the super early stages of a company and like just dead set on you knowing that they have an assistant and like they don't do this and they don't do that, and it's like it takes a while to get out of that. I
didn't have an assistant until 4 years in with Goodr. Then I finally hired one, and it was really just because I was like, I need help. Like, I'm trying to book these things. It was a lot of stuff happening. I think when it's born out of like a business need, sure, right, but it's born out of just like you feel like you're supposed to have it, right? And then that's that shows that you're a CEO. Yeah. One, it doesn't, and two, like it can start to put you in the mindset that like you're above whatever's going on, and like that's just not that's not a helpful place to be. You've mentioned your team on a couple of occasions, so I want to zoom in there. How do you build teams? Like, what are you looking for in the people that you're bringing onto a team? Yeah, it's so interesting because Goodr was always so small. I always think about that. When we hit our first $5 million in revenue, we were probably a team of 5. And then I think we went the venture route and raised capital, and I think it was like, I remember people would meet me and be like, how big is your team? And I'd be like, we're really small. There was a time where that was a measurement of how successful you were, right? If you had 100 employees then it's like, you're more successful. So I think I've focused on like trying to hire fast and trying to get people in the door. Now I really focus, and I'm trying to reshape that, as like hiring for culture. Is this somebody who really cares about where we are today, where we want to go? Are they all about me person, or they are all about us person? I think that's really important. And I have transparently hired people that were all about them, and it was just like their hours and their this and their feelings, and not the people that we were serving. So I think now I'm trying to hire better and build teams better. That hasn't been honestly like my biggest strength. It's probably been a weakness. I feel like we've hired some great people. There's been people that have been with Goodr. My first driver I ever hired is still with us till today. So and he started off part-time and now came on full-time, and he's been with us for a long, quit his other job that he was working at and came on to Goodr. So there's proof in that we definitely have something that people love. And even when we do our employee engagement surveys, 100% of people love Goodr's mission.
Yeah.
Do they love the salary? Probably not. Like, we're not that, we don't pay the most. We don't have all the big benefits yet because we're just not there as a company.
Small, yeah.
So I want to just hire people that want to see us get to the 100 million, $100 billion company that I believe we could be. And that's going to take a lot more focus. And I think now that I'm hiring like executives to sit with me at the table, I'm focusing on like getting those right people in so that they can help me build a strong team.
I completely relate. And it's something that I wish that, again, was like discussed openly more because it's hard. It's hard building a team. It's hard.
People leave, and then it's just like, it's just, and I will say too, I think specifically I would say this new generation is interesting. And I mean, it's interesting. I saw a news story the other day recently that said like 19% of this generation was bringing their parents on job interviews. I thought that was it was like such a crazy number. I was like, bringing their parents on job interviews.
I've never heard
oh yeah, I will 100% send it to you. It was on CNN. It was like 60% during the interviews couldn't keep eye contact. 55% had unrealistic pay expectations or promotion expectations. My mom told me recently there was a young lady that they hired out of college, and like 2 months in, she was like, yeah, I really want a promotion. And it just was like, no, like, I'm going to hustle and I'm going to work hard. So I think it could be harder. I think it's going to be harder. This is the first time, I think, in history where we have 4 generations in the workforce. You have this new, one of our employees told me the other day, he's like, yeah, I was in high school when Goodr started. And I looked around like, oh my God, like he was in high school when we started. Like not like he was in high school when I started this company in 2017. But then you have millennials, you have the baby boomers, and you even have seniors that are still working, because they're not making enough. So you think about having 4 generations and managing teams, and this time it's different.
How have you navigated from a relationship standpoint when seasons change, right? Like because what's interesting is like a lot of times when folks join the team, there's excitement all around. Yeah. You're excited that they're there. They're excited to be there, hopefully, right? Most scenarios. And then, like, life happens, right? Like, just skill sets don't align. It just doesn't match up. Yeah. How, as a leader, have you navigated when a relationship is just not going the direction that you wanted it to go in?
I mean, I've had to make some tough challenges. I've had to let people go that I feel like were there for a long time. People that I knew. I remember when I first started Goodr, I hired people that I think were like friends, and transparently, none of them are there now. And that's okay. And that's a tough situation to make, to be kind of the last man standing. Yep. But when the work isn't getting done, if this isn't the best person in that role, you got to split up. And it's tough. And then you got to go back to the team and the people that are still standing and share, hey, why you made that decision, and stand on it. And I've had to say, like, listen, tough decisions aren't always easy. And, the hard decisions are tough. And, it equals both of them. But there's tough decisions and there's right decisions. And as a leader, you got to make the right decision for the furtherment of your company. And that's kind of what I would think about. Like, is this the person that's going to, who you sometimes get to 10 million with won't be who you get to 100 million with. It won't be who you get to $1 billion with. And that's okay.
I found that, like, if the decisions that are being made are coming from the right place. Yeah. That the relationship a lot of time can survive. Yeah. Over time. It might not be immediately.
It may not be immediate, yeah.
But like over time, things seem to like, that's my hope
even
at least.
People that have not worked with Goodr in the past, or like don't work with us anymore, I feel like always still want the best for us because they know that my heart is in it for the right place. This wasn't something that was created in a venture studio. This wasn't a class project. I was feeding people. I really built this company as a team of one from nothing. Yep. And if you can respect that at the core of anything, no matter how the relationship ends, you know that you want me to win. You should, right? Because I'm trying to feed people. I'm trying to solve big problems that are going to make the world better for all of us.
You're in a position now after years of being in business, and congratulations. Like another thing that we, I think, move past too quickly, making it to your first birthday in business statistically is...
It's like 80%.
Yeah, most folks don't make it.
I mean, wow, that's crazy.
Most folks don't make it to 5. Yeah. Right? And so, like, once you hit 5, like, you really are in a different... You're a different type of organization than
the early 1 and 2 years.
Most companies. So now you're in a role where there are folks that call you all the time, right? Looking for guidance and advice. Yeah. or how maybe do you decide when you're going to invest in somebody, your time and effort and energy?
Yeah.
What is it about them
Yeah.
that like makes you say, okay, I'll take some time here?
I like real direct questions. I hate to pick your brain, like, because it's like, that sounds crazy. Like, but if you're like, hey, Jasmine, I am building A, B, C, and D, and I really want to talk to you about whatever it is, I'll respond. And I'll say, like, hey, let's pick some time. Super excited to learn. I know you introduced me to somebody recently that I'm meeting with. I think it's the People's Market. They're out of DC. And I'm like, I'll have a conversation because it's like, how can I support? And I was to how I operate and how I live, like, what would I want someone to have done for me? With that being said, I also know I would have never messaged anybody and been like, can I pick your brain? I ask very direct questions like, hey, this is my challenge right now. If you get an opportunity, I'd love to talk to you about A, B, C, and D. And when I used to meet with people, I would meet with the mentor. They would ask me questions. Next time I would meet with them, I would come back with answers and more questions or whatever it was. That's how I used to operate. So I try and, specifically women, for certain, women of color, I always try and figure out if they ask, I'll try and meet. I get a couple of requests like that, I would say on a weekly basis. And a lot of times they'll just, especially if they, email my assistant because she knows I'm like that, they'll get added on the calendar and I'll look up and be like, oh, I'm meeting with this person about whatever they put in the message. And I dedicate my time in a way that I try and make some time for everybody.
I take a lot of pride in being that person too.
Yeah.
But I'm totally with you. The more that is free game. The more specific you are.
Oh yes, please.
It just helps to clarify. I had a person a couple of weeks ago. They were like, I'm raising money. And I'm like, okay, give me how much, what type of, and look, everyone has a starting point, and you're not going to be able to answer every question, especially if it's your first time. That's not what I'm saying. But it became very clear that, it was much more kind of in the ideation stage than it was, a sincere... and that made the conversation hard. I think another example of this,
and also be open to what people are going to say. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and it was about raising money, and I was like, can you get customers first? Can you? And you could tell it was clearly not what they wanted to hear. But you got to be okay with that. I'm giving you real advice.
If you really ask for it, take it.
You got to take it. It's hard to raise money. Do you have customers? Can you get more customers? Can you go that route first? Can you bootstrap some? The companies that have the most success are the ones that did it without raising capital first. And so sometimes people are like, oh, I had a interview prep call with the panel I'm speaking on next month, and the lady, she said, Jasmine, you've raised a lot of money, and you've raised millions of dollars, and how have you done that? And I remember I said to her, I want to reframe that, because I think that was her thing. She was like, you've raised a lot of money. You've raised $7 million, or however she split the number up. And I was like, I told her, I don't want you to frame it that way, because that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of what I'm building. And I've had to say, I've mentioned this to you. I've mentioned this to other people before. Also, I want to tell you, when you're meeting with me, you're meeting with experience, lived experience, that it hasn't always been good. Yeah. And so I'm not going to just tell you the good things to hear. I want to tell you the hard part, because that's the stuff that I think will ultimately help you make better decisions.
And I honestly think it helps, especially in a time period where people are inundated with all these what look like success stories online, to be able to see a real person and say, look, I made a mistake here. And I think this place, we spent, I think, most of this year talking about this capital issue. Yeah, it's very hard to raise capital.
It's hard.
And on one hand, it is a tremendous accomplishment to raise millions of dollars. It's very hard to do.
Even to raise $1 million, it's definitely, and I don't take that away from anybody. And I know that I accomplished something by raising capital for the company, but I'm also really proud that I've made more money in 1 year than any capital I've raised in the history of the business.
And that's huge. Yeah. But on the other side of this, it's there's a very real conversation that there's so much more opportunity.
Yeah.
And
there is.
There's so many other organizations that
and they're so far behind. And so far behind. I think it's just, I had a great meeting with the lady today, and she was like, yeah, I think women of color raise .0000. I mean, it was like the way she was giving the numbers. I was like, oh, great. Like, it's terrible.
Bro, it's really bad.
So it's tough. It's tough.
I want to talk quickly about Atlanta. Atlanta's an important place. You've been here now for a minute.
Over a decade.
Why is the city so important?
Well, I love Atlanta, first of all. I love the city. I really do. I think I came to Atlanta because of that dream, which I think most people, it's probably why you built Gathering Spot here first, right? Believing like it's the city, they call New York the city of dreams. I always thought Atlanta was like the city of dreams, of entrepreneurship. And, I was working with celebrities, even in Phoenix. So when my sister was going to Spelman, my dad was like, oh, we don't know anybody there. They cared way more about her than they did me when I went to college. And jokingly, I always tell them that. But came to Atlanta and really believed I could work with more celebrities. I could build more here. And everything I believed I could do, I was able to do here. Did I struggle in Atlanta? For certain. But that's part of the story. I think that's everybody who's successful in Atlanta probably had some level of struggle here. I just don't think anybody, it was just always easy. So I had struggles here, but when I first moved here, it was affordable to live here. So I was able to get a little apartment for $800, and I was, living my life and, going out on the weekends, and there was culture and everything was happening. I love the culture here. I love the people. I think, I don't know if Goodr is Goodr had it not started in Atlanta. The level of people that support it. I remember when I was pitching on pitch competition stage, just people that I never met before coming up to me like, oh, you killed it, I support Goodr. Just they loved Goodr and they brought into it and they helped. So many secretaries were like, hey, I'm over here at Turner. We waste a lot of food. I want to bring you in and have meetings. Like this happened in Atlanta.
No, look, I love the city for the same reasons.
Yeah,
it's the only place where you can just be anywhere.
And people are going to support you.
And folks are actually supportive. They actually will show up
and cheerleading you on.
Yeah.
Even no matter what, if they're just saying good, they are supporting, they're liking, they're loving. My kids were born here, so I feel like it's home for certain. Based off that fact. This on their birth certificate, they were born in Atlanta.
It says Atlanta. No, I had that. So my daughter was born on April 4th, so 404, and I was like, I got a real Atlanta,
I got a real Atlanta
baby. It's we're
so
stuck.
funny. My daughter loves lemon pepper wings, and I told my dad that the other day. I said, she can't be more of an Atlanta kid because she just loves. That's her favorite thing, and she's 3. And I'm like, where is this 3-year-old loving lemon pepper wings? That's
like in your spirit at that age.
Yeah, she's an Atlanta kid, for sure.
My last 2 questions. Again, going back to relationships, when you think about the future of this city, right? You're working in a space where the problem of food insecurity, despite the way that it's often discussed, is solvable.
Yeah, 100%.
We don't talk about it that way, but
I've built a whole plan to solve hunger in this city alone. Exactly what it would cost, exactly what we would need to do.
How do we get there, though? But how do we get there? Imagining that whatever that path is going to rely on a lot of people, right? So, how do we get to that place where, at a minimum, everyone in this city does not have to go to bed hungry?
I think we have to be open to more solutions at scale. I think one of the things that people have said oh, Jasmine, why haven't you ended hunger in Atlanta? I've had people ask me that, and I've said, I haven't had the resources to do it. It costs money, and their money is there, and it's been spent. If you see some of the budgets for some of the nonprofits in this city, you'd be shocked. And a lot of the costs that I've been able to present and kind of formulate show that the money just isn't dispersed equally, and there's not a lot of opportunities to change the old guard. And I think that's our biggest opportunity, honestly, as citizens of this city, to be open to new things. We've done it in so many other ways, but when it comes to how we solve really big problems that affect people that are living on the marginal poverty line, we are really resistant to big level change there. It's very much like, this is how we've always done it. And I get it, and sometimes it can be political. People from every corporation sit on these boards, and this is how it always is. And so when you're a startup, you're someone who has a new idea to solve a problem like me, it's kind of like, oh, how is she doing this,
Yeah.
And I think people think they can only have one relationship. You have to be able to have a couple, right? You know, like it doesn't have to be like you only have one church home. Like you could have multiple ways to solve hunger. You can have multiple ways to address financial literacy. You can have multiple ways to help girls and help boys. And when that happens, then things can happen faster.
It sounds like we're gonna need a lot of people, like a lot of stakeholders to all get interested. I've been asking folks this question. I call it the phone test. It's the idea that like when your name pops up on someone's phone, what feeling do they have? What feeling do you hope that people have when your name comes across their phone?
Wow, I hope that they would be like happy to hear from me. I mean, because I'm not someone who calls. I don't call and beg or anything. So usually I'm calling because it's like, hey, I'm trying to do something. I've got an opportunity. I'm trying to feed people. You know, do you have a location I should feed them at? Like whatever. I've got a grant. Like I want to roll out this new service. So I hope people are hopeful. I hope that they're hopeful. Like Jasmine's calling me and something good is going to come out of this. And at least once they talk to me, I definitely hope that that's how they feel.
No, I think that you've got that like way down. Right? I mean, it's hard to be in business the amount of years that you've been in, especially with the work that you're doing, and folks not have that sort of feeling when they see you reaching out or when they're reaching out to you, right? Like, but again, I don't think that there's so much talk about like what brand do you have and how are you building your brand. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it gets down to how do people feel about you when they see
you call
when your name comes up, right?
That's very true.
My last question, and it's again a question I've been asking everyone, but I'm a big believer that no matter what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about our work, that there are a bunch of people and experiences that inform that work, right? And we've talked about some of the things, where you're from and the work that you were doing before Goodr. But oftentimes, and you give a lot of speeches, right, about you're talking about the company in a lot of different settings.
It's so funny because I told someone said to me they're like, Jasmine, are you still speaking? And I'm like, couple times a month.
Well, yeah.
I guess I just don't post it. Like I think there was a time when I was like all the time, like, hey, I'm on
talking
this stage.
all the time.
Now it's so much of my schedule that I'm just like, I might post when I'm in the city. You may catch it on my stories or something, but I'm not. I need to do better. But I am speaking a lot still.
I'm with you though. Like it happens, right? But the question in there is that there are people that oftentimes don't make it into the speech, right? Because we're so focused on the main talking points that we feel like are the things that folks need to know. But today I want to talk about the person, right, that you feel like should be in that conversation that you don't get often enough time to talk about that's been influential in your life. Who is that person and why?
I mean, my dad has definitely been really influential in my life, I think. I always joke, and he hates when I tell this story. When I was first building Goodr, I think my parents, they loved me. But I think that there were times when they just did not think it was going to happen. I took over 200 meetings to get one yes, and that's the many meetings that came after that. And this is just to raise $1 million. And I remember my dad was telling me, like, Jasmine, you got to keep your lights on, sending me jobs. And I think at some points in my journey, I felt like maybe he wasn't being supportive. I think he just was caring. And now and one of the biggest things I could say is I wasn't a parent then. I wasn't married when I was starting Goodr. Just thinking those two things have changed for my life over the last 5 years. So now as a parent, I can see the concern of like, hey, is my kid going to make it? Like they're trying this job. So I definitely want him to know that he's been like a big influence in my life. I think the biggest people who influence me are the people that I'm helping. I can't tell you how many times I've been out at a grocery store, at the airport. I mean, you'd be shocked, and people have said, hey, during the pandemic, you were feeding me, or you deliver food to my grandmother. My grandmother shops at your grocery store. I mean, I'm praying for you. I'm supporting you. And this is Atlanta people. Like they have come up to me on a consistent basis. And that's like the inspiration for me, because no matter what, and I always tell people like, I have still big visions for Goodr, and I want Goodr to do a lot. Like we're 40 million meals served, 30 million pounds kept out of landfill. We've done a lot, but there's still so much more to do. But even if I had it in it today, like I'm really proud of what we've done. And the people that we've done it for have been the ones that have ultimately kept me going. Because there was a lot of times, a lot of times I'm like, I don't know how, not only do I want to give up, I don't know how I've not known how I would make it, and so something will happen. And I believe these people have been the angels that make money just appear in the account. Like, like, oh, wow, we got that payment in. Or like, like somebody out here is praying for us. And I believe it's the people that we've served. And they've been my inspiration to keep going.
I think it's a perfect place to leave this. Thank you, not only for today, but for the work that you're doing. To be able to look back on your life and know that you impacted people in the way that you are every single day. To your point, there's no plans on this ending tomorrow, but if it did, what you already have accomplished is something that our community should really be thankful for and let you know. It's in many ways, there's no greater honor than serving that role in a person's life, just being there for them in a moment where they needed it, and you're a person that's doing it.
Exactly. I think it's, can we give people hope in their darkest hours? And I think in many cases from Goodr, I mean, I've seen the emails, I've gotten the calls, I've gotten notes and cards and letters and flowers where people have said that we were that for them, and that is what I'm most proud of.
No, it's the most important, and although not personal connection in the same way where you're like there's an ongoing, and I know with some folks it has been, right? But like it's a form of community building that I think when folks look back on this time in Atlanta, you're going to be one of the people, and your company is going to be one of the companies that folks look back on and say, I'm really proud about that effort.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm really proud that I started it in Atlanta. I don't have regrets. I don't have regrets. I think that's the biggest piece. It's just no matter what, I just don't have any regrets. Yes. And I feel good about what we've done. And I feel even more hopeful and inspired about what we still are going to do.
A lot more to go. See you soon. I appreciate you.
Thank you.